Alan Greenspan, 1926 to 2006. You know, every so often a story comes along that truly marks the end of an era, a moment that makes us pause and reflect on the very passage of time itself. On a quiet morning, June 22nd, 2026, the world said a final, peaceful goodbye to a man who quite literally held the financial heartbeat of the nation in his hands for nearly 2 decades. Alan Greenspan, the legendary maestro of the Federal Reserve, passed away at the remarkable age of 100. He left us at his home surrounded by the steady warmth of a century of memories, finally succumbing to complications from Parkinson's disease. Those who worked alongside him often remember his grounded presence, a man of immense intellect who never lost his quiet human touch. His wife of 29 years, the vibrant journalist Andrea Mitchell, shared a touching tribute calling him a vibrant figure who helped shape the American economy under presidents of both parties. It is a poignant reminder that even those who seem like giants of history are, in the end, guided by the love of those closest to them. Behind the cameras and the complex economic theories was a real person with a story that began not in a boardroom but on a stage. Born in 1926 in New York City, Alan was a brilliant boy who found comfort in the precision of mathematics and the soul of music. You might be surprised to know that before he was a doctor of economics, he was a student at Juilliard playing the clarinet and saxophone alongside jazz legends. He spent his early years traveling in a swing band, earning his first dollars as a professional musician. It was there in the quiet moments between sets that he would sit with his books on math and handle the band's accounting. You know, sometimes a story comes up that reminds us of how our smallest hobbies can lead to our greatest destinies. A gift from his father, a book titled Recovery Ahead, served as an early, unforgettable spark for his lifelong journey into the world of finance. In 1987, Alan Greenspan stepped into a role that would make him an economic rock star. For 18 years, spanning 4 different presidencies, he served as the chairman of the Federal Reserve. He was a man of steady warmth and incredible discipline, guiding the nation through the Black Monday crash just months after taking office. He became known as the maestro because of the way he conducted the complex instruments of the economy with such a calm, deliberate rhythm. He gave us phrases that became part of our history, like irrational exuberance, a term that famously came to him while he was relaxing in the bathtub. It's these simple human details that make his great achievements feel so much more approachable. He wasn't just a man of numbers, he was a man who understood the hopes and fears of every American family, striving to keep inflation low and the economy growing. As we celebrate his life, we also honor his unforgettable courage in looking back. True greatness often lies in the ability to say, "I was wrong." In his later years, Alan was remarkably open about the mistakes made leading up to the 2008 financial crisis, admitting that his trust in the self-regulation of markets had been flawed. His colleague and partner, Andrea Mitchell, noted that he was always straightforward in admitting his mistakes. This grounded presence, this willingness to learn even at the age of 80 or 90, is a beautiful reminder that we are all works in progress. He showed us that even at the highest levels of power, one can remain a student of life, always seeking a deeper truth. Alan Greenspan's century-long life stands as a story of extraordinary commitment to public service. He leaves behind a legacy of stability and a framework for monetary policy that will be studied for generations to come. As we look back at his 100 years, we are reminded to appreciate the wisdom of our elders and to cherish the quiet, steady presences in our own lives today. Though he is no longer with us, his influence continues to live on in every corner of the financial world he helped build. He was a man who lived through the Great Depression and lived to see a new millennium, a true bridge between the past and the future. His journey reminds us that a life well lived is one filled with both music and meaning. His legacy continues to live on in every frame of our economic history. Tributes to Alan Greenspan. David Clayton-Thomas, 1941 to 2026. Every so often a story comes along that reminds us that where you start doesn't have to be where you finish. On the evening of Wednesday, June 24th, 2026, the world lost a truly grounded presence and a powerhouse of soul, David Clayton-Thomas. He passed away peacefully at the age of 84 at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto, leaving behind a vibrant musical history that bridged the gap between the grit of the streets and the glamour of the Grammys. Those who worked alongside him often remember his unforgettable energy, and the legendary Clive Davis once described him, quite simply, as a staggering musician. Behind that husky, high-strung tenor was a man who lived a life of remarkable redemption, a man who transformed a difficult past into a symphony of jazz, rock, and blues. Behind the cameras and the gold records was a real person who knew what it meant to struggle. Born David Henry Tomset in England, his early years in Toronto were marked by hardship and a fractured relationship with his father. By the age of 14, he was living on the streets, eventually spending much of his youth in and out of jails and reformatories. It was in that stark environment, where most would see only despair, that David found his salvation. A turning point came when he picked up an old guitar left behind by a fellow inmate. He taught himself to play, and for the first time found acceptance in jailhouse concerts. Sometimes a story comes up that reminds us that even in our darkest moments, art can be a lighthouse. When he was released in 1962, he changed his name to David Clayton-Thomas, a decisive act to leave his troubled past behind, and began honing his craft on Toronto's Yonge Street, mentored by the great rockabilly legend Ronnie Hawkins. The transition from a street kid to an international icon happened almost like magic in the late 60s. When David joined Blood, Sweat, and Tears, it was an electrical connection. Their 1968 self-titled album didn't just top the charts, it sold 10 million copies worldwide and famously beat out the Beatles' Abbey Road for the Grammy for Album of the Year. Through hits like Spinning Wheel and When I Die and You've Made Me So Very Happy, David's voice became a steady warmth for a generation. He led the band through historic performances at Woodstock and even became a pawn in Cold War diplomacy during a controversial tour of the Iron Curtain. He once reflected that he was just a blues player at heart, saying, "Give me 3 chords and I've got a song." It is a poignant reminder that the most complex success often grows from the simplest passions. In his later years, David returned to his roots in Toronto. He wasn't just a legend living on past glories. He was a vibrant advocate for the next generation. He became a devoted champion of Peace Builders Canada, using his own history with the justice system to mentor youth who were facing the same barriers he once knew. He believed with every fiber of his being that nobody is born bad and that everyone deserves a chance to start over. His daughter Ashley recently shared a beautiful, simple detail of their final conversation on Father's Day. They laughed about politics and they talked about the World Cup. It's a gentle reminder to all of us to appreciate those around us right now, to cherish those simple everyday chats, because they are the threads that weave our lives together. David Clayton-Thomas leaves behind a legacy of unforgettable soul and the enduring proof that a life can be rebuilt with enough will and a little music. He was a giant of the industry, a big light whose absence makes the world feel just a little dimmer. While we feel the weight of this loss, we choose to focus on gratitude for the voice that preached love and the heart that never stopped fighting for justice. His legacy continues to live on in every frame and in every soulful note of a spinning wheel that never truly stops. Tributes to David Clayton-Thomas. Giorgia Moll, 1938 to 2026. Every so often, a story comes along that reminds us of the true power of a steady warmth and a grounded presence on the silver screen. Those who worked alongside her often remembered the way she could command a scene, not with loud gestures, but with a quiet grace that stayed with you long after the credits faded. Giorgia Moll was more than just an Italian actress. She was a vibrant bridge between the classic cinema of her homeland and the grand stage of international film. Behind the cameras was a real person who moved through life with the same elegance she displayed in front of them. She leaves behind a legacy of depth, of nuance, and of a beauty that was as much about her soul as it was about her striking features. Our story begins in the Kingdom of Italy, in the small town of Prata di Pordenone, where Giorgia was born on a cold January day in 1938. She was the daughter of a German father and an Italian mother, a heritage that perhaps gave her that unique international air that would later define her career. Sometimes we forget that even the biggest stars start with simple dreams. At just 16 years old, Giorgia began a career as a model, and by 1955, she had won the Miss Cinema beauty contest. It's a reminder that sometimes a single moment of recognition can open the door to a lifetime of inspiration. Her career blossomed during a golden era, a time when Italian performers were gaining a new kind of visibility on the world stage. In 1958, she took on the role of Fong in Joseph L. Mankiewicz's The Quiet American, a production that made history as the first feature film shot in Vietnam. Those who were on set during those difficult filming days often recalled her steady warmth, even as the crew navigated the harsh shadows of Saigon and the complexities of a political story. She held her own alongside legends like Audie Murphy and Michael Redgrave, bringing an emotional layer to a story that resonated far beyond the borders of Italy. But it was perhaps her collaboration with Jean-Luc Godard in the 1963 masterpiece, Contempt, that truly solidified her place in the hearts of film lovers everywhere. Playing the role of Francesca, the multilingual assistant to an American producer, she became a vital part of a film that explored the very nature of cinema itself. Critics of the time and scholars today still marvel at her performance, a role that Godard himself saw as crucial to the film's design. She shared the screen with Brigitte Bardot and the great Fritz Lang, yet Giorgia's presence was unforgettable, a testament to her quiet strength. Away from the high drama of international sets, Giorgia was a beloved figure in the everyday lives of Italian families. Many will remember her with a nostalgic smile, appearing in the popular Carosello television advertisements for Pasta del Capitano. There was a simple, human joy in those commercials where she appeared alongside Carlo da Porto, and the iconic line, "With that mouth she can say whatever she wants," became a staple of nightly television. She even shared her voice through song, recording several tracks during the 1960s, showing us that her creativity knew no bounds. It's these simple details, the commercials, the songs, the modeling, that remind us to appreciate the small and beautiful moments with those we love right now. On June 2nd, in her beloved city of Rome, Giorgia Moll passed away at the age of 88. Her departure is a poignant reminder that while the industry changes and the years pass, the characters she brought to life remain captured forever on film. We aren't going to dwell on the sadness of her loss, but rather focus on the gratitude we feel for the stories she helped tell and the meaning she brought to so many. She was a gift to the world of cinema, a reminder that love and art can help us get through even the hardest battles. Her legacy continues to live on in every frame and in every viewer who discovers her quiet grace for the first time. Tributes to Giorgia Moll. Janie Sell, 1939 to 2026. Every so often a story comes along that reminds us why we fell in love with the magic of the theater in the first place. It isn't just about the bright lights or the booming orchestras, but the people who filled those spaces with steady warmth and a grounded presence. Those who worked alongside her often remembered a woman who was as kind as she was talented. The legendary composer Alan Menken once shared that she was his very first leading lady in a production called God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. He described her as wonderful to work with and beautiful and evocative. Even 47 years after they first shared a stage, her memory lived on vividly in his heart. She was a performer who didn't just play a role, she inhabited it, whether she was standing center stage or supporting a fellow artist from the wings. She carried a vibrant energy that felt like home to her audiences. Born Janie Sell on October 1st, 1939, in the hard-working city of Detroit, Janie carried a bit of that Midwestern grit and unforgettable charm with her all the way to New York City. She made her Broadway debut in 1968 in George M., sharing the stage with greats like Joel Grey and Bernadette Peters. But it was in 1974, in a nostalgic World War II era musical called Over Here, that Janie truly became a household name for Broadway fans. Playing the role of Mitzi, she performed alongside the surviving Andrews sisters and was part of a cast that introduced the world to newcomers like John Travolta and Marilu Henner. That year, she walked onto the stage of the 28th Annual Tony Awards and walked away with the trophy for Best Featured Actress in a Musical. It was an unforgettable moment, captured in a black and white press photo where she and Tommy Tune are seen clutching their awards, their smiles reflecting the pure joy of a dream realized. Behind the cameras and beneath the heavy stage makeup was a real person who valued growth and family above all else. Sometimes a story comes up that reminds us that our careers are only one chapter of a much larger book. After decades of performing in hits like Pal Joey and I Love My Wife, and even standing by for the great Carol Burnett in Moon Over Buffalo, Janie did something truly inspiring. She enrolled at Hunter College and graduated with honors with a degree in psychology. She eventually transitioned away from the spotlight, working as a personal assistant at a major firm in New York. It's a poignant reminder that no matter how high we climb, we remain connected by our simple human desire to learn and to serve others. She was a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother who found as much meaning in her quiet life in New Jersey as she did under the spotlights of Broadway. On June 9th, 2026, at the age of 86, Janie Sell passed away peacefully at Inglewood Hospital, surrounded by the family she loved so dearly. She had faced a brief illness with the same steady warmth that defined her entire life. She leaves behind a legacy of laughter, music, and the kind of vibrant storytelling that keeps the history of the American theater alive. Her passing is a reminder for us all to appreciate the people in our own lives right now, to listen to their stories, and to cherish the moments of collective effervescence we share. Her son, Jason Fries, and her many grandchildren are the living testament to a life well lived. While the theater lights may dim for a moment in her honor, the joy she brought to the world is far from gone. Her legacy continues to live on in every frame of her films and in every heart that was ever moved by her voice. Tributes to Janie Sell. Martha Zoller, 1959 to 2026. Every so often a story comes along that reminds us of the profound impact one single dedicated voice can have on a community. Those who worked alongside her often remember Martha Zoller as more than just a broadcaster. They remember a vibrant light and a steady warmth that filled the room long before the microphones were even turned on. She was a woman of unforgettable energy, a pioneer who transformed the landscape of Georgia politics with a sharp mind and an even bigger heart. Jay Jacobs, the owner of Jacobs Media, recently reflected on her passing, calling Martha one of the most consequential voices in the history of WDUN, and a light for everyone who knew her. She wasn't just a commentator. To many, she was the matriarch of the airwaves, a trusted presence who felt like a neighbor sitting at your kitchen table. Behind the cameras and the studio glass was a real person who deeply loved her state and the people who called it home. Her colleagues at the Georgia Gang shared a poignant reminder that while the world knew her as a sharp analyst, they knew her as their irreplaceable friend. Sometimes a story reminds us that life's greatest chapters often begin in the most ordinary moments. Martha's legendary career didn't start in a high-rise office, but as a stay-at-home mom who decided to pick up the phone. Her first call to a radio station in 1994 was famously prompted by a comment from Hillary Clinton about staying home and baking cookies. From that simple act of speaking her mind, she built a vibrant legacy, eventually hosting the Martha Zoller Show and becoming a grounded presence on national networks like Fox News and CNN. She proved that a woman could indeed have it all, as though she often joked, just not at the same time. Beyond the political debates and the heavy 100 awards, Martha was a person of deep conviction and simple joys. She was a loving wife to Dr. Lynn Zoller, who is now retired and enjoys the quiet peace of fly fishing, and a devoted Oma to 6 grandchildren. Her unforgettable spirit even took her to the front lines as she traveled to Iraq twice during the War on Terror to show her unwavering support for the troops, a passion she inherited from her father, a World War II veteran. It is a gentle reminder for us all to appreciate the ones we love right now, just as Martha cherished every moment with her family amidst her busy life. Martha Zoller passed away at the age of 67, just days before she was set to retire, and begin a new chapter focused on her health and her family. While her physical voice may have gone silent, the vibrant echoes of her wisdom and her civil discourse will continue to resonate through the hills of North Georgia for generations. She leaves behind a legacy of speaking up, asking the hard questions, and caring, truly caring about the future of her community. Her life serves as a beautiful reminder that a life lived with purpose is a life that never truly ends. Her legacy continues to live on in every frame of film and every recorded word she left behind. Tributes to Martha Zoller.